All right, we are live, and welcome back to another episode of the Creator Spotlight. Today we have the esteemed Sean Forney with us. Yes, I said esteemed. Well, at least in our neck of the woods, you're esteemed. We all know who you are. And you do a lot in the comic world, not just coloring. You've done a lot of your own books and works and stuff. Um, so I'll turn it over to you. Tell me where you're from. How did you get started in comics, per se, and then what really brought you, I would say, to the point where you knew what you wanted to do in comics.
All right. So I'm from Ohio.
Go
Originally,
Browns!
what's that?
Go Browns!
So I originally grew up outside of Toledo area. Currently just outside of Columbus. Um, grew up as a fan of comics and cartoons and stuff. I had all the great '80s cartoons to kind of influence me. Everything from He-Man, Spider-Man, His Amazing Friends, Transformers, Thundercats, GI Joe. All that. Um, and then that inspired me as a kid. And I don't know, I was probably like 2, 3 years old watching He-Man. And then probably about the time I was in like kindergarten, I think, was when I discovered Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And probably around that same time, maybe first grade, I can't remember exactly when, but picked up my first comic book, went to the corner drugstore with my dad, and he pointed out the comic books on the bottom rack of the shelf and whatnot, and I'd seen the Spider-Man cartoon, so it was like, hey, there's a Spider-Man comic book, so picked it up, fell in love with it. And as a kid, I was always drawing, and it was just kind of my thing to do when there wasn't anything else going on or whatever, or something to keep myself busy or whatever. And I think as I got older and started collecting comics a little bit more seriously, I actually got a pull list at the comic shop and that kind of thing. Um, really tried to dive into it and started reading up articles in like Wizard magazine on how you got into the industry and stuff. And when I was in seventh, eighth grade, I saw one of the things on how you break in the industry and stuff, and like that kind of clicked and was like, "Ooh, I could do this for a living." And that's when I started to kind of actively pursue it. It's like started like really trying to figure out how do I put together a portfolio. Um, and then when I was in high school, I started sending out samples to publishers to try to get feedback and stuff. And back then, they would actually send you some type of email or letter back of like, here's some advice, whatever. And I think let's say it was my junior year of high school. I finally made my way to a convention and actually got to talk to artists and editors and things like that. Um, so through all that, found my way how to try to get into the industry. Um, and then went to school for it. Went to school at Bowling Green State University. Got my degree in fine art. Um, Again, right out of college, I was submitting artwork wherever I could, that kind of thing. Started up hitting up conventions a little bit more frequently, and just tried my best to find whatever I could when I would go to these shows or whatever I could find online as work. Um, and then as I was doing that for about a year or so after graduating, my wife, who was at the time my fiance, we up and moved to southern Indiana for a while, and I had been freelancing for a company in the Toledo area, and it was just kind of one of those things where it's like I could kind of continue freelancing for them a little bit, kind of part time because they still needed some help. And then I basically dove headfirst into taking on all the stuff that I could, just doing the whole freelance thing. And probably after doing that for a good 5, 6 years of anything that basically came across that that I could get my hands on to work on, I kind of fell into a spot of doing a lot of coloring work. it was kind of like one of those things where a buddy pointed out to me, it's like, oh, you should do more of this, do more of that, whatever. And I actively pursued it. And at San Diego Comic-Con about 10 years ago now, that's how I ended up meeting up with Murat. And he and I have been working together since then. And I actually said this past weekend when we were at WonderCon, he's like my greatest like promo person ever, because he always, anything that comes up that he knows he can send my way, he does. And, he points people in my direction. So it's, I'm like forever in debt basically of all the stuff he sends my way. And so like that whole just kind of fell together, and that's what I've been doing. And I've picked up all sorts of other jobs inside of comics because of doing some of that stuff. And like you mentioned, my wife and I have a create your own book, Scarlet Huntress, that we've been doing since basically late 2003, early 2004. We put together the idea. We did a like little short story in an anthology, and that's where we came up with the character, the concept, the whole thing. And last year we finished off the story arc, so it took like 20 years basically to finish the story arc we started. And we're working on another issue of that hopefully later this year, hopefully to have at Comic-Con. And like the whole thing you and I like connected to set this up was we've got a Kickstarter running currently for doing a art book. It's Heroes, Villains, and Cryptids. So it's like everything that I've worked on for the last about 5 or 6 years, I think. Like as far as I went back in like my folders of artwork on my computer was like 2018, and I just compiled everything into one big folder, and my wife kind of divided them all up to like, this is like prelim sketches, this is covers, this is whatever. And so it's each like folder got its own like separate thing, and then we had to mix and match and come up with like, here's 84 pages for volume 1. We currently have enough for 3 volumes, so we'll see how successful volume 1 is, see if we can put out the other 2. So yeah, I think that is kind of how I got into this and what I'm doing in a nutshell.
And so I'm bringing up your Kickstarter actually, because I was looking at it earlier today. So everybody, this is the main one. So there's a lot of goodies in this one too, if you guys kind of look through it, right? So right now, congrats, you're already funded.
Thank you.
1693 out of 1,000 already. It was a goal, and 25 backers and 23 days to go. Out of those 25 backers, it's probably everybody that you know already.
Pretty much. I think there was maybe like 1 or 2 folks that I didn't immediately recognize the name.
Mm-hmm.
But again, thanks for like setting this up and doing this, because it's been such a struggle to try to get people to see this. Like it's social media, it's unless you're paying for like doing a big promotional thing, like the word just doesn't get out. So it's struggling a little bit to try to get people to pay attention to it, but hopefully work on it over the next few days. And then we've got C2E2 coming up at the end of the month, which is where we're going to close out the campaign. So we're hoping like between now and then try to get people to see it online, and then make that last ditch effort at the con to be like, hey, here's what we've got, check it out. We've got flyers made up with a QR code, takes you right to it and all that.
What I think is interesting about this Kickstarter, right, is you're given 3 options, right? You're given a square paperback version, you're given a spiral bound, which not a lot of people do that anymore. The only people I really seen do that lately was really Steph Wilson and Carrie Ann, because they do that with their art books and their sketchbooks. I've got a ton of theirs, but then you're also doing a hardcover, right? So the one thing that was really kind of fun about this one is there's a secret deal in here if you kind of look at it. So I'm just going to kind of show everybody is this early bird special, right? So it's $75 for this one, right?
Yes.
And so if you look at the other prices that's in here, $50 for the hardcover, $25 for the spiral bound, and $25 for that. So that's essentially you're buying two and getting one free.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so that's an awesome deal for everyone.
yeah. It was. We wanted to set it up to make it, a good deal for everybody if they wanted to get all three. Kind of figured that might be like the smaller end of what people might go after, figuring they might pick their favorite cover image or their favorite type of binding. Me personally, I like the spiral bound stuff, like you mentioned, Steph Wilson. I've seen his art books. He and I actually talked about it last year when I was thinking about putting this together. Um, I'm a huge nut for J. Scott Campbell, and he's done a number of sketchbooks that are all done with the spiral bound. I like it because you can open the pages up, it lays flat, you can see everything. You don't have to worry about the binding on the perfect bound getting messed up or not staying open. It's kind of same thing with the hardcover. So,
Yeah.
but I know there's folks that like. I talked to a buddy about it. He likes the hardbound because it sits on a shelf nice. It's got the nice, you can see what the book is, all that kind of stuff. So it's like everybody's got their own taste. So we found a printer that made it affordable that we could give all three options, and they do great work. So it's like, let's take advantage of it.
And that's what's great about, like, if you think about it, right, from today's standard of printing compared to the 90s and 2000 standard, right, like you didn't have options like this for a comic book and
Yeah.
for art books. Yeah, usually if it's an art book, it's usually a hardcover
Mm-hmm.
typically, and then if it's comic, it was a floppy copy. Square
Yeah.
bound, you saw that very rarely. And usually that was like a graphic novel size, right? 48 to 64 pages, you might
Yeah.
see square bound. Um, so being at where we're at today, where independent, and we're all independent people, is that there's a lot of opportunities to reach other people who like things differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I kind of wanted to highlight, some of the interior pages here, right? Because you do a lot of work. And a lot of people, they associate you to mostly coloring, right? But you also do a lot of covers as
Yeah.
well. Like I've got that Red Sonja Vampirella cover. The Thundercats one you just did for Dynamite, right? Like you've done multiple covers, but coloring is where a lot of people know you at.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, looking at that, do you think that coloring is really what opened the doors for you to be able to do your own books the way you wanted to?
I think a little bit. If definitely coming from the aspect of like financially being able to do it because I'm able to color probably 4 or 5 times as much as I'm able to draw in a day. So I think that's definitely enabled me to be like, okay, I can do X amount of color X amount of covers or pages or what have you, and then use that to offset. Okay, I want to do work on my own book. This affords me some time to do that. But again, it's definitely with all the folks that I've worked with doing the coloring stuff, it's definitely presented new avenues to work with people. Be like, hey, I also do this, or I can do that, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I think it's kind of gone hand in hand as a um, uh, kind of a bridge to making those other things happen.
And like I see the Vanish cover. Like I remember when you did that a long time ago, right? And for Image, so we're seeing a lot of options. The Ethereal, right? Because I
Yep.
work with Ethereal with Dustin and them. So it's like there are you work with a lot. Like if people actually looked at your website, and then as a reminder, everybody, I put all of Sean's links down in the description below. His website, his Forney Fanatics, as all of us are called, and then the his shop as well if you want to buy some of his items. So, but if you look through his actual website, you'll see like he's done tons and tons of stuff across multiple publishers: Counterpoint, Coffin, Ethereal, Aspen, Totally Rad. Um, and then, of course, working with Marat doing Counterpoint. I've seen tons and tons of covers you've done for Do You Poo, right? So it's like Do You Poo, Harley Thinn's always been a big one for a lot of us. We collect that. And it's like it's just a spoof comic, but we still love it, right? So
Yeah, it's been crazy. Murat and I did a podcast right before we left for WonderCon, and he said he thinks we're up to like 3,000 covers on the Boost stuff right now.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Now, granted, I did not work on all of those, but I've definitely worked on a big majority of those. And I'm assuming that's his count of like everything with all the retailer covers and stuff. As far as I know, that number could be even greater. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, what's nice about DU Poo is it gives artists an option, right? Like
Mhm.
if to come into the fold of Counterpoint, to help out. And then I've seen like the retailer ones, and then I've seen the artist exclusive ones, right? Like say, hey, you're going to do a Do You Poo, like and then they do a Hardly Thin, and then they do, a series of them. Clam McDonald, they do it too. Like that's one of my favorite ones every year that they do is like that. Who does it better, right? Like the
Yep.
pick 2 or pick 4. Like I've collected that every year, and I was like, and it's always funny to see like who's going to try to draw it better.
Yep. Yep.
And it's like, all right, nobody's, but the funny part, there's never a winner, right? Like they
Yeah.
never announce who the winner was out of it. And it's like, wait a minute. I said, is Steven just trying to get my money? Is this but we love Steven. He takes care of all of us.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We will be doing an in store with him April 25th, the night before C2E2 starts.
And you've actually got a commission slots open up on his page right now. So guys, if you're not part of Clan McDonald, I will put that also in the description down below. They had 50/50s with Murat and Sean, and those sold out already.
Yep.
And now they just have the regular commissions through Sean, and he's got really good prices for that. I'll tell you that. So go check it out.
Yeah, I think last I saw, I think like 4 of the slots are sold. So there's definitely some openings. But like you mentioned, the 50/50s sold out. Those were gone super quick.
Oh, I love that. That's one of my favorite ones they do, and I missed out when I missed the day that it opened because they're gone the first day.
Oh
The
yeah.
50/50s are always if you don't catch it the day it opened, you're not getting one.
Yep. Yep.
And so let's see, so talking about Scarlet Hunters. Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Because people might not know what that is. So if you can kind of explain how did it start? I know it's co with your wife, but
so the basic idea of it is she's a modern day descendant of Little Red Riding Hood that hunts werewolves and other cryptids. And it came about, I was doing some work for a small publisher out of Cincinnati area. And they were putting together an anthology, and they asked if I could come up with a short 5-page story to add to the anthology. So at the time I was still living back home. I had like just graduated, moved back home for like a few months. And my wife was here in Columbus area. She had moved back home because, we had both just finished up school. We were still trying to figure out what was going on, whatever. And so I called her up and I said, hey, I got this opportunity to do this. Would you be willing to help me come up with a story? We'll come up with this idea, put it together, whatever. And so we did. We came up with it on the phone call, like plotted out the story, came up with kind of like a rough idea of the script, and I proceeded to draw it, get it lettered, the whole mess, and sent it off to the publisher. And they really enjoyed it. They liked the idea and liked what I did. And so the next issue of the anthology that they put out, they asked to do a crossover between one of their characters and our character, and we ran with it. It was another short 5-page story, and got to play around with some fun ideas. And it was a fun experience. It was got to work with a different writer on it and that kind of thing. And that both anthologies were successful for the publisher. They asked about doing like a one-shot story. I think it was a 16-page one-shot, and I was like, okay, yeah, we'll come up with something. And so we did. We wrote the story, kind of build out like the origin idea, because the other stuff, the two short stories were basically like, no, just action happening. We didn't have any kind of origin or build up any of that kind of stuff. It was you kind of had to jump into it, just going with the idea we set about in the story. And um, once we had the stuff ready for this one shot, sent everything to the publisher. And you had mentioned early on, like, we didn't have a whole lot of printing options. There wasn't a lot of print on demand stuff around that time. There was really only I'm blanking on the name of the printer at the time. There was Kablam was like just getting up and running, and there was another printer that most everybody was using to do print on demand. And it completely escapes me because that company ended up closing down shortly thereafter, and that's what kind of led to what I was getting at with this. My long story of how we did this book was the publisher, like, they wanted to use that printer, like they preferred their paper stock or something. I can't remember. They're very particular about it, and it's like we were getting ready to do another convention season and nothing was happening. They weren't getting it printed. The place was backlogged, all sorts of excuses. And so I finally just kind of got frustrated, and I said, look, I'd like to go print this on my own. We're going to do, a couple other conventions coming up. No hard feelings, but I would like to, just go do this on our own, have our own thing going. And, no problems. They had no issue with it, whatever. So that's what we did. I think that was 2006. We printed the first full issue, the one shot, and we did a black and white 16-page book. Just got the story started. Took a couple years. We did issue 2. It's actually in trying to get it done in time for the first time we did San Diego Comic-Con. My buddy and I decided on a whim, it's like, hey, we need to, up our game, whatever. Let's try to submit and get into San Diego Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. So we sent off our stuff to try to apply for, I think it was a 2008 Comic-Con. And we got accepted, but then we started to do the logistics and realized how much of a headache it was going to try to be to do, all that. And so we were like, all right, let's kind of like regroup and figure out our plans for the next year. So we did. And so 2009 was when we, it took 3 years, got the next issue done. We applied, got back into San Diego. We set up in small press and did that 2009 to 2014, I think. There was like a year we missed in there, and there was a year I decided to skip out because trying to do the small press thing was just kind of brutal at times for me, because I like to do commissions. I like to draw when I'm at a con, and the small press area, that's just not their usual setup. So it was a little bit of a struggle for me. But we got the first couple issues out that way. Then that was when we first did the first Scarlet's Field Guide. We Buddy and I were sitting around, came up with the idea of like, it would be cool to see like Scarlet keeping a journal, a notebook of all the creatures she comes across, and just do like our own in universe. Here's from her point of view, everything she's come across, and what happens, what do these creatures look like. So we put it together and tried our best at the time to make it look like a journal. But again, this was either 2009 or 2010, somewhere in that area. We were putting together the book, and we didn't really have much in the way of, funding for one. And the other thing was there wasn't a whole lot of options for us, again, for like the print on demand thing to get what we wanted. So we did a shortened version of the book. I think it was like 36 or 40 some pages. It was a lot smaller than what we initially planned, but we wanted to have it to take out to that next Comic-Con. And we did get it. We got it printed. It was a perfect bound, black and white interior book with kind of the stuff we wanted to do. And then a couple of years down the road, in 2012 into 2013, I believe is when we did it. Friends of ours had done a Kickstarter for trying to fund a movie, and I started seeing stuff pop up where people were funding comics, and so it's like, okay, let's try this. Let's see if we can do the next issue of Scarlet Huntress through Kickstarter. And so we did it. It was a big learning curve. We had to figure out all the stuff to make it work, and we failed miserably because it took way too long to try to get the book done. We did not account enough for like shipping, that kind of mess. It was just like, okay, here's all the notes we need to take for if we ever do this again. And at that point, it was kind of like, I don't know if we'll do it again. But that's how we ended up doing our third issue. We were able to do it in full color. We actually sent stuff over to China to do offset printing. Did everything we really wanted to do. Cool. We got a third issue. And then we got, let's see, that should have been like 2013. We got the book done, got it out there. And then I started doing a lot of other work. So it meant even more stuff got pushed aside with trying to do the book. And then I think it was 2019, I think, was when we decided, okay, we're going to do issue 4. We'll kind of follow the same format we did with the previous one, where it'll be a couple of short stories. It'll all tie together, yada, yada. And we had run 2 Kickstarters at that point. We did the third issue of Scarlet Huntress. I did a pinup art book, and it was like, okay, we figured out some of the faults in our plans here with running a Kickstarter. Let's see if we can do this better. So we did. We went and we put up Scarlet Huntress Adventures, which was our 4th issue. Ran the Kickstarter. It was very successful for us. By that time, we had learned a lot of stuff on how to do this, how to promote, how to plan, and get the ball rolling. And so we got everything funded, got the artwork done, started to get stuff ready to pack, ship, print, all this mess. And if I remember correctly, we got everything printed in time to go to C2E2 in 2020. So we had everything ready. We handed out whatever copies of the books we could to folks that were going to be at the show. Got home, and that's when the world shut down.
Oh, yes.
So we spent the first week or 2 weeks of the pandemic in our basement packing up 300 and some odd packages to ship out for the Kickstarter. And the pandemic definitely changed how we do a lot of this stuff for us. Like my buddy and I started doing live streaming. We started diving into doing all sorts of other stuff. We were doing like the Facebook live sales and, all these kind of crazy things because, there were no conventions. Everything was going crazy, so that was like, okay, let's do another Kickstarter. Like everybody was like really diving in and going after the indie stuff. And so we decided, let's do the field guide the way we wanted to do it originally. And so we did. We set out and we got 16 of our friends to join in. A couple of them wrote some short stories. My wife wrote all the rest of the stories. And myself and 15 of our friends created all sorts of artwork. And we made it like 84-page field guide of here's all the stories, artwork. We did full color. We did a soft touch cover. Like we went all out on it. We did all the stuff that we actually could make happen now that there was, crowdfunding. Because when we did the first one, it wasn't available. So many more printing options, and the list goes on of all the stuff we could do now. So that was, we ran that Kickstarter through the whole pandemic thing, and got the book done, got it sent out, and it was like, okay, it's time that we wrap up the story arc that we've been building this entire time. So part of that pandemic time was spent, we wrote, plotted out everything to do the issue that would close out the story arc that we've been working on. And then we ran the Kickstarter in 22 and got everything fulfilled early on in 23. And that was a 48-page book that like wrapped up the story arc. I brought on 2 friends to help do the inks and get the book done and make it look nice. It was like it gave us the opportunity to, like I said, not only bring on a couple of friends to ink, we brought on somebody to do letters for it. I think we ended up with a much better package when it was all said and done, because we were afforded the opportunity to like actually have some fellow creatives work on this thing instead of us scrambling to do it with just the 2 of us. And so, yeah, that's like all that stuff built up to us, finally finishing this first story arc that we started, 20 years ago. And now we're working on doing volume 2, starting on issue 1. I'm working on the pencils of it right now. Hoping to have the book done as like a 16-page version of the book that'll be available as like a Comic-Con exclusive, and then later in the year bump it up to like a regular 24-page book, and do a Kickstarter with it, if things work out the way we want it to anyway.
See, and that's the thing, right? It's like it took 20 years to get there, but it's your book, right? And it's your series, and it's self done. And if you think about actually 20 to 30 years ago, that would have never happened, right? Like
Yeah.
self making your own book. I mean, it's hard. There's only been, I mean, I can name it in a couple of handfuls, right? Brian Polito, Billy Tucci, Evelyn Hartso, the guys at Image,
Yeah.
Dynamite, and Cinescope, right? And Raven, those guys. Like, it's hard to break it and make your own thing and do it. So today we have so many more options. Like, Kickstarter has blown up, and it really blew up, really during COVID, because that's
Yeah.
kind of the way artists could get their stories, get their books out to people, because you couldn't go to the con, you couldn't do that anymore. Everything was shut down. So how do you get your story out? And that was the only way. And I loved it. I mean, I enjoyed it because I got books every month,
Right.
that way, but it was like, I still miss the convention, right? Of talking to everybody in person, because it's always the fun part for me. Because I'll have buddies of mine saying, "So what do you do when you do a convention?" Well, I sit in artist alley all day, pretty much just talking to people, because that's what I'm there for. I'm there for comics and things like that. I'm not a personality celebrity guy, so it's like I don't want to sit in the hour for 6 hours just to get one signature. I'd rather go talk comics with people, and that's how I get to know everybody. Um, but with COVID, that stopped all of us, and there were so many of us that were just stuck at home. They're like, we were all waiting for it to, come open so we could go do things like that. Um, but now it's full on, and I mean, there's conventions left and right. Like, I know you're in Ohio. I know they have them there because my buddy Adam Fields, he's always going up there too. So he's like, there's always something going on now.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like we try to like pay attention when we know we've got a con coming up and realize, oh, there's 3 or 4 other ones going on, in the like across the country. It gets a little more concerning when they're in like the same state, or maybe a one state over. And then it's like, how much traffic's going to be drawn to that show versus this show, that kind of thing. But it that whole COVID time where it was like nobody was getting out and everybody like started going online, like you said, it was like everybody was diving in, getting their books from Kickstarter. Like I said, we started doing the live stream thing because it was like a way to interact with other people and kind of get a little bit of that con feeling when you get people coming in and chatting and that kind of thing. And it definitely changed up how we did quite a few things, to kind of like progress forward and get back to doing cons. Now it's like, well, if the con's kind of dragging, we'll set up and do our own Facebook live sale from the con, like,
Yeah.
So it gave us like different avenues to pursue this stuff. It definitely made us more productive in many ways. Like that's definitely how I was able to like actually knock out books within like a year time instead of like 5 in between each book. Um, and again, that also goes to like some of the creators that I've had the chance to work with. It's like I can, work with them, do stuff, and um, I'll have a little bit more time for myself where I can go, hey, I can work on my own thing now because, I just did X amount of stuff for other people. I know the bills are paid this month.
Yeah. It's the fun part, right? Like you've done everything that you needed to do. Now you can go have fun, and
Yes.
you can do your creator own thing, which is what I've loved seeing everybody do. Like, I mean, over the last, I want to say 4 years, really, I've seen a lot of that creator own being pushed through Kickstarters while they're still doing covers for other things. Ryan Kincaid is a good example, right? He does
Yeah.
his Persuasion through Marat's Counterpoint. He did Con Artist. He had there's multiple series. Ethereal doing, If It Has, Babes, Gores, and Dinosaurs. Like you see all these coming through, and they're all Kickstarters. Now, some of them are starting to show up in LCSs as well, because here's the thing: if we don't put things in LCS, there is no LCS, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a catch, right? It's like catch 22. It's like, do we let the big 3 or 4 just run the LCS, or do we want our books in the LCS? And that's where we've got to kind of push that a little bit. I know I used to work with Diamond. I know how Diamond is, so it's like I'm so glad that Lunar came on board, to help do distribution of books, because it should be a better avenue for artists and for publishers to be able to get their books in the stores. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing like walking in and I say, that's Sean's book. I know that book and it's on the store. And then that means somebody other than me who's already a fan and a reader, somebody else is going to see that and pick that up and hopefully buy it and become another customer and another fan of the book.
Yeah. And that's definitely one of the steps I want to take at some point, is trying to look into doing the distribution. I did talk with one of the gentlemen I know that was at least last year was working with Lunar, just to get an idea like what I would be getting into. So it's it's definitely a goal at some point. It's just trying to make sure that I've got the ability to actually do the stuff in a timely manner to make it worthwhile.
And that's the catch, right? Like when you're doing distribution to LCSs, right? They have an expectation of when are the books coming out, right? When do we see it? Is it going to be quarterly, monthly, annually? Like, and then sometimes the business side of it is like, is it really worth their time, to do that? Isn't it worth your time to do it at that point, right? So it's like
Right.
the cost of books is not cheap, not at that level, right?
Right.
And you got to make a profit. We're not trying to go broke while doing it.
Exactly.
Um, but one thing I did want to show, so I had you do some work for me a while back. Um,
Ah, nice.
yeah, so you did that one for me after Mike and or Marissa and Ryan did that. So I love how you did the colors on that. And I know it was hard because it's already a red cover, so that had to be a kind of a gambit to do as well.
Yeah, it was fun. Like I like working on toned paper. It was like one of those things I discovered in college in various drawing classes and stuff. It's like, you know, I actually did for a little over a year. I tried to do it daily. Was do a drawing on a post-it, like just a standard 3x3 or whatever they are post-it. And um, when I decided to do it, my wife was like ordering something from Amazon or something like that, and she's like, "Well, here, I'll just order this multi-pack," and it had like I think 6 colors in it, and they were
Mhm.
like a little bit darker tone. It was like a blue green, purplish color, whatever. And so that was my goal for whatever year I started doing that, was like, can I do a drawing a day? And I got pretty close. I think I probably missed about a month's worth, basically, between not being home because of cons or holidays or what have you. And I really like tried to figure out different techniques to like work on colored stuff like that cover, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna draw this character that's, you know, like if I was drawing Hulk, I might do it on a green piece of paper,
Mhm.
but then try to figure out, okay, how can I play with, the lights and darks and color to make this work as an actual, finished drawing. Um, and so anytime I get to play around with that, I have a lot of fun with it. Like I was doing it kind of fell out for me, like, because I didn't have a lot of people requesting anymore. But a lot of times I was doing my con sketches on a toned paper because I could do that. I could play with either color or at least play with the grayscale and using white paint or colored pencil or something like that to bring out highlights and stuff. And like, I don't know, it's just something I really enjoyed doing, and tried to squeeze it in when I could. But it just didn't seem to get as requested as much as like I wanted to do it.
And so you're talking about doing it on a sticky, you know. Hey, have you ever thought about that? That might be your, stretch goal, right? For your Kickstarter. Hey, you buy X amount, you get a sticky drawing.
Right, right. And that's
uh,
I think we did something like that with one of the Kickstarters. I know I did one that was with the Cryptids book that we did.
mhm.
I did basically the month of October. I tried to do a daily cryptid drawing. And so we had a package where it was like you get a random insert of one of those sketches that I did during my live stream.
See, those are fun because I mean that gets people kind of like into like, especially if it's like if you have say 500 people that back, right? Like, hey, out of 500, we're just going to shake the ball magically. One of you is going to get it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It is like, and it's like that anticipation moment, like when you open your box, like, did I get it? And it's like, oh no, I didn't. And it's like, but then you're gonna feel like your buddies gonna be like, hey, I got it, and you're gonna be kind of happy with that, like, right? Like it's gonna be something that you can look forward to throughout the campaign, look forward to it after the campaign, because that's the thing, right? With Kickstarters, everybody has to understand that, right? Yes, when you fund, that's great. When it closes, it's great. When the Kickstarter, that doesn't mean you're getting the books the day after the
Right,
Kickstarter
right.
ends, right? Like people have to understand patience. There is, it is as bad as it is. I'm going to say it. There's a anticipated date, right? It's in there, but that doesn't mean really anything, right? Because here's the thing: it's like printers can delay things. Things can be delayed from anything, right? Like somebody gets sick. Say the book's not done, right? Like say the funding that people are getting for is to help finish the book. So the book has to get finished and then printed and then shipped out to people. So that's where people need to have patience, really, with these Kickstarters. Like it takes time for some of them. But as long as everybody communicates, you're fine. That's the thing is when you start ghosting people and don't say nothing, you take the money and run. And we all know how those are in the Kickstarter
Yep.
world. Um, we've all been plagued by that, and it's like all you really wanted was to get what you paid for it. You didn't get it, and it's like there's nothing you can do. There's nothing
Yep.
you can do. I mean, and it's as sad as it is. There, as we're kind of stuck with the way it is. But as long as the creator is communicating with you, you'll be fine. Like I can wait forever. I don't care. If it takes a year, year and a half, I know I'm going to get my book someday. As long as the creator's telling me what's going on, I'm okay with that. Now, from a customer's perspective, they'll be like, well, that's a long time to wait, right? For something. But things happen, especially with COVID. COVID was a funny animal, right? Like everything got delayed
Yep.
because you couldn't get stuff in and out of China. You couldn't get stuff in and out as far as if you're making, say, bookmarks, koozies, think, the stretch goal stuff, right? Like some of that you have to send overseas to get made, and sometimes it takes a while. So I would just ask people that do pledge on Kickstarters to have patience with it. And if you have problems, then communicate and talk to the owners of the Kickstarter. Half the time, within a day or so, they're going to communicate back to you. So just be patient with people.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Because that actually happened to us on the last Kickstarter. Um, my wife found out she had some health stuff to deal with, and we were closing in on trying to get the book done. And everything you mentioned, it was like the funds were helping us afford. Like I had mentioned earlier, we hired a letterer, had two friends helping out with inks. And I'm super grateful that it worked out that they were able to help us out because that got us kind of back on schedule. We were still late. There's no way around it. I mean, it just we knew, hey, we found out stuff in October, and it's like, guys, until we know what's going on, we're kind of shut down. And we got at it as soon as we could, and we had it out. I think in March. Our
That's
initial
not
plan
bad.
was going to try to do like November, and we realized that's not going to happen. But we try our best to communicate with everybody. here's what's going on. Here's why it's late, that kind of thing. And that's what, like, the current Kickstarter we've got running. The nice thing is everything's done for it. Artwork's already done. The page layout's done. The only thing is if we hit a stretch goal and we add pages to it, but the page adding in this process is simple. Again, the artwork's already done. It just needs to be dropped into a template. The time consuming part will be like on now which 6 pages do we add, that kind of thing. But we did give ourselves some time. It's like, well, we know, when this thing is done running its course, we know we still got the beast of San Diego Comic-Con in July, and all the prep is going to lead up to that. So I think we have the date set at like October or something to fulfill. So, everything might get printed, might be sitting here at the house, but it will get packed up and shipped out as soon as humanly possible once some of the other stuff's taken care of.
And the funny part too is, like, people don't realize a lot of people that are creator-owned Kickstarters means that there's one person, maybe two, packing everything, right?
Yep.
And like trying to do everything. So if you have 500 orders and you got 2 people trying to do it, guess what? It's going to take a while. And so and there's a lot of time and effort going. I mean, I've seen Dustin go through it, Marat and Ryan do it, and it's just like there's so much to get done. And I see, like, Ryan's got his new place, right? His new warehouse. So like they're gonna have more room to do things, but still, you only got so many people, and it's going to take time to, And do you want it fast or do you want it right? And
right.
It's like I'd rather it take time, get packaged right. That way, it don't come to me damaged, and then that way I don't have to go say, "Hey, look what happened." Now, post office is the post office is the post office, right?
Yep.
You can't do nothing about that, but try to help out, and it's like, and you kind of meet in the middle with that one. But yeah, it takes a while,
It does. Thankfully, we've got great friends. We had it work out really great because, like, one set of friends, they were running a Kickstarter, and then we were running a Kickstarter. So when theirs was ready to ship, they came to our place so that they had room. We've got a huge basement where we actually set it all up so where we can pack and ship stuff. So they came to our place. All right, you're in charge of doing this. You're in charge of doing that. You're going to be the one that checks all the packages, that kind of thing. So there's 4 of us. We got all our stuff done in like a day, including we printed out all the shipping labels, the whole kit and caboodle, basically. And then they came up, helped us pack up ours. And then, we did ours. And another friend, he ran his Kickstarter. He brought all of his stuff over, packed it all up. And then, they came back over and helped us on our next one. So it's like, it's great that there's, folks in the community that are also friends that we can all chip in and help one another when it comes to all this stuff. And, it speeds the process up, it gets stuff out there, gets stuff into people's hands that have been waiting for it, that kind of thing. But just that ability, it's like, to call up a friend and be like, hey, I'm doing this. You want to lend a hand? I'll, get you some beer and some pizza or whatever. Bribe you.
Yeah, instead of it being that help somebody move, it's like help me pack.
Yeah. It's like it's easy, just sit here and put stuff in bags and boards. We don't have to lift anything heavy,
No,
it's just monotonous.
It takes longer to bag and board and put them in the bubble wrapper or the cardboard to get into the Gemini to get it shipped out.
Yep.
Like I've been on that like conveyance line, right? Like I'm the guy who tapes at the end of the Gemini. It's like, and they're like, you're using too much tape. You cannot use enough tape.
Yeah.
More tape, more protection. So I've got a question for you. So this book, right? So Sworn Fest. Now we all know what this book is. This is the instant edition, right? Like, and this is one of the craziest books that's ever done, really, by any company. Really, it is. Like, I was at Sworn Fest this year when they did it. So seeing everybody, Mike Crumb's son, Gomez, everybody draw it. And then I see your name on the top of here, right? Yeah. So that tells me you were the colorist for this, right? So
I was basically the last person to touch it.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
because the timing, I mean, it still blows my mind. Like, how fast is this done? Right? Like, literally, they've drawn it. It goes to you for coloring, and they go straight to the printer, which I know is right next door, right next door to Coffin. It's just down the street.
yeah,
But still, to get that done and get everybody, I mean, everybody's got to be busting humps to get that done.
yeah. So I saw Monty post. All of us got like our artist proofs in the mail within the last week. Um, Monty posted and said I think he had like 6 minutes to work on it. I wasn't there for that part because I was at home. They asked me like a month or two in advance, like, hey, are you available such and such date? We want you to color this thing. You're gonna have a 3 hour window. And I had to look and like figure out the time zones and all that mess and be like, I'll keep the day open. That's not a problem. We'll make this happen. Um, so like day before they check in with me, make sure we're all still good to go, ready to rock and roll. And then the day rolls around, like, okay, we're down to about an hour. You should be getting the file, such and such time, whatever. So I get the file because the only thing they told me from the get go is it was going to be a jam cover. So in my head, I'm thinking like when we do jam covers as con sketches, everybody draws like a little headshot. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be coloring like 6 or so headshots, something like that. And I get the cover and I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so I pieced together by what everybody was saying and what was there, how they did it. It was like basically each person did a little portion of the drawing and
Yeah.
added to it. Like in college, we called that the exquisite corpse. I don't know where the heck the name came from, but that was like the game you played. And so it was like, okay, clock's ticking. I got 3 hours. I went to town working on it. 2.5 hours in, I'm like, I think this might actually be done. Kind of did like one last look through it and sent it off to the editor. And they asked for 2 like really minute changes. Um, it was something like they wanted like something on the face toned down or something like that. And I can't remember what the other one was, but they also wanted me to shift all the names just a little bit. So it was like first I had like a half hour that was, like, ooh, I'm done a half hour early. But then it ended up being I was done like 2 minutes early. It was like I'll say 6:58. That was my cutoff. My cutoff time was 7 or whatever. I had 2 minutes to spare. Sent the file. They were happy with it. And then the next day, because like after I'd done it, it's like, hey, good job, whatever, that kind of thing. But I wasn't there in person to see it happen. So Clan McDonald was doing a live sale from Swornfest, and Steve and Aaron were on. And I'm like, guys, how'd the instant edition turn on? I haven't seen it yet. They're like, oh, it's great, blah, blah, blah. They're going on about it. And so finally they actually, had them on the table. And so they got it on camera. I was like, sweet. I was like, I don't know if I'm getting a copy, so sell me one. So I ended up buying one from them, and then I got artist proof copies. So it was really cool to see it come together. And then like, now I can actually hold one and be like, okay, I was part of this. It's just a kind of almost unbelievable feat, but at the same time, it's kind of crazy because when Murat and I are doing some of the covers that we do, he will either the night before or the morning of, he'll shoot me a text and be like, hey, I've got a cover coming that we need like ASAP. Can you get it done for me first thing in the morning, or can you get it done for me like early afternoon? So he'll start working on the cover. I'll get it, and there's 2 or 3 hour time difference between the two of us. So I'll get the line art, and on average, it's a couple to a few hours for me to get one of like say the Pooh covers. Those are usually pretty quick because a lot of the information's already there, and it makes my life a little bit easier. But we'll knock out a cover, and some days like we'll have a cover done before like noon, and it just amazes people. And it's like we've got a system. We know how it works. We work well together, and it's like it's just one of these things. Is like especially with being in this industry, is you got to be quick. Like, and that's everybody kind of applauds the ideas that he'll come up with of like, this is the new hot thing this week. Next day, boom, we've got a cover. Or that later that night, we've got a cover, and everybody's like, how the heck are you guys doing this? It's like, he draws it. He's got the idea. He comes up with it quick. I get it. I put my touch to it, and boom, there you go. And it's just kind of a fun little thing where it's like, we can laugh at it. Just the idea of like, both the concepts, because they're sometimes just out there and crazy. Like we've done all sorts of stuff, like the Will Smith slapping Chris Rock type
Oh
thing.
yeah, I remember that one. That
We
was
did
funny.
we did a couple of Tiger King things when that was hot and all over TV. So it's, just doing stuff like that, just for giggles, basically. To all the other stuff where retailers want, like homage to this or homage to that, and it's like, get to play around with some really cool stuff that I get to kind of experiment at times, because a lot of times with doing those homages, it's like trying to reverse engineer, like, how did they get this look? How did they do that step? So it's like I get to play in all sorts of little sandboxes when I'm doing these things.
Well, and that's what was kind of fun to watch. Like I remember when you did the Wolverino one, right? Like and how he did that one, and then he had the secondary version of it where it's like the Incredible Hulk 181 homage, and it's like and you see those little things like that and like the background, like even when now this was the funny one. This now did you know the story behind this one?
Um,
What
I
happened? What happened at Swornfest?
I don't. I didn't hear that. All I knew is probably a couple weeks before Sworn Fest, I got an email like, "Hey, can you color this?" And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "It's Lady Death and it's Pooh," and I'm like, it was kind of odd that it was coming from somebody else instead of Marat. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, sure, sign me up, whatever." And then same thing. Like I wasn't there, so I didn't know what was going on. So I only saw it when it hit the Clan McDonald live sale.
Mm-hmm. So what happened was is Marat wasn't at Swornfest the whole time, right?
Okay.
Until the last day, Sunday morning. And so we're getting ready to go inside the convention center. Um, Brian runs out and says, "There's somebody here with a bunch of Pooh Bears." And I'm like, yeah, I'd already put it two and two together because I remember seeing Steven post a picture of him and Marat in the car together, like
Oh
before
yeah, yeah.
Swornfest. I'm like, all right, so Marat's going to just show up. He does that. I've seen him do that at cons after con after con. He'll just show up magically and be there. You won't know that he's coming, but he'll be there.
Right,
Um,
right.
and it's he shows up, and then the Pooh book comes out. Everybody's picks it up that day. Because a lot of us, like for me, when I go to Swornfest or to a convention that I really like, I'll buy every book. Like I'll buy every artist cover book, right? And so I'm like, it's Marat. I've known him for a long time. I'm gonna buy your book. But it was just funny the way of coming in saying he's put poos everywhere, and it was just like something you would never think about. And he's like, and then Brian's showing the book to everybody outside, swinging it, and I'm like, this is awesome. See, this is what makes it fun, right? To go to a
Yeah.
convention. And Swordfest is completely different than any other convention in the world. Like it really is. So I mean, if you get a chance, definitely come to the next one.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I guess I gotta like cross my fingers, beg something. I don't know what the scoop is to get in on it. So hopefully one of these days I'll be there.
I mean, it was the same way. Like Anna and Joe, we were talking. We were on stream last week. She wants to come too. I'm like, all of you guys have been doing covers for Coffin for a while. You've been doing coloring. She's been doing coloring and line art. But it's like, and you've done some phenomenal work. I've seen like that Indiana Jones Lady Death one that you did a long time. I was like, I still have that one. I was like, you just don't see stuff like that anymore. The only people that really do homages there are Marat, Stephen Butler,
Hmm.
and then you and the ones you did, right? So it's like I like homages, but it's got to be in the right scale, right? The right
Sure.
style. So like when Marat does this kind of stuff, I laugh my butt off at it. But like when Stephen Butler he does a Kirby esque,
Yeah.
most of the time. It's a Kirby or it's a Starlin or those kind of ones. I'm like, okay, I like that. But then I also like the twist on the homage, like to make it your own. The Indiana Jones one, that was a good one. I love how it was because you never see her really like in clothes like that, right? Like she's always in her normal outfit, So it's like it's cool to see different things like that.
Yeah, they've got some really great ideas with like how they come up with this stuff, and um, like you mentioned, Stephen Butler doing the homages. That was like one of the earliest covers I think I colored for them. It was like I'll say maybe the third, fourth cover I did was oh, why am I blanking on her name? La Muerta. They sent me one of the covers that he did for that, and I think it started out as like a sketch cover, if I'm not mistaken. And they were like, okay, here's what we want, and it was like this really cool idea of playing up the whole like Day of the Dead thing that they did with it, and it was just neat to see some of those concepts how they come together. It's just it's unique to them, you know.
And that's what's nice, right? Like it's like you're gonna always see Lady Death, Hell Witch, La Muerta. Like that stuff's always gonna be golden and coffin because you go back to the old chaos days, right, of the '90s and 2000s, right? Like that's what they're there for. If you see Joe Michael Lisner, right, he's always gonna have Dawn. If you see, if I think Jimmy Palmiotti, right, like he's always done Vampirella, right, like
Yeah,
from the Harris days, and Amanda Connor. Everybody has their little niche things that they do. I mean, Marat's got Hardly Thin and Do You Poo now. So it's like the little homages are great. The hard part is when it gets overdone, right? Like when it's been done so many times, that's where some people are like, all right, am I done buying the homage, versus the real cover,
right,
So it's
right.
kind of, there's a 50-50 piece there.
Yeah, that's where it's like always tricky. It's like people like the homage idea, and then there's people that are like absolutely appalled by it, basically. And I get both sides of it. I totally understand. Um, and it's just kind of crazy to see those like opposing viewpoints, but like and then eventually a lot of them come together, and it's like okay, that one's really cool because it's based on such and such and this person and that character, yada yada yada, all that stuff. And it might only be that one cover they go after, but at some point there is that common ground where people are like, yeah, I just got to have this one just because it's this. And there's all the things about well you're using somebody else's idea of doing the homage, whatever the case is. Like I like doing them because it's fun because I can like sit there and pick apart how a particular artist did something. Like just for an example, a couple years ago somebody had me do an homage to a David Finch Moon Knight cover,
Mhm.
and it was a poo cover that I did. But just trying to like reverse engineer how Finch puts all those lines on everything. It's like, holy cow, how does he do this and how does he do it so quickly? Um, and so it's like things like that I get a kick out of. And it's like, okay, cool, I did something that looked the style of this person and so on. But then, again, I can also still come back to the idea of I can step aside and go do my own thing with whatever it is, and then I can come back to that if I want. It's like, I did, uh, I think 3 or 4 homage covers I've done on the Scarlet Hunter stuff over the last few years, where it's like, it's just for fun. It's like give somebody a different thing to look at because again, there's folks that love the homage stuff. There's folks that don't like it. Whatever. Those folks that love it, that might be their first venture into picking up my book, just because I homage, their favorite whatever cover, and it's a way to attract an audience that might not ordinarily come look at my stuff. And I know that happened with one because I homaged the Venom Lethal Protector cover.
Mhm.
Um, hopefully, he won't mind me saying this, but Sam De La Rosa, who was the inker on that cover, and I believe the book, if I'm not mistaken, he actually saw me posting like in progress shots of it, and he's like, "How can I get this? Like, I want to get some of these to have at cons." So he actually bought a stack of books from me so he could take the cons and do signatures and remarks on it, just because I homaged the cover he worked on.
See, that's freaking awesome. I remember when that book came out in the 93, 94 era. It's like seeing those kind of like Bagley, right? Like Mark Bagley, McFarlane, that era of people from
Yeah,
the 90s. Like that's the ones we grew up with. That was
yep.
our era of Spider-Man. And I was in the 80s for a while too. Like my first book was in 87. Was my first comic. So it's like I remember reading like the old Neil Adams Batman, right? And then the all the stuff that Alan Moore was coming out with Swamp Thing and stuff. But Spider-Man was always there. McFarlane really brought out, like issue 298, 299, 300. And I was like, okay, I really enjoy that style. Bagley came out, but then Venom really was kind of put in like behind, right, for a long time. Like he wasn't the character. It was always Doc Ock. It was always somebody else against Spider Man. But in the '90s, they really brought Eddie Brock back with
Oh yeah.
Lethal Protector, the Funeral Pyre, and then you had his whole saga with like Ghost Rider and Wolverine. And I was like, so that's cool to see like those kind of artists enjoy what people are doing today, right? To homage
Yeah.
their characters. Like it's bridging the gap is what it's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Because I talked to Michael Golden last year, right? And he's an old Marvel Tales guy, and early Transformers with Jim Starlin and those guys. And he was just like, it's not the same. The books are not the same. I'm like, yeah, but the thing is you've got readers and artists and people now that want to see some of the old stuff redone. And that's how you grow people into a better customer space.
yeah, it's very interesting to see like how that all like progresses um and see like the trends that pop up of what people want to go after. Like I I think my first book, like you mentioned, yours was 87. I think the first comic I got would have probably been like 87, 88, somewhere in that ballpark. It was a Marvel Comics Presents. It was a reprint of an old Spider-Man book, and it was
Mm,
um, Ross Andrew did the interiors on it,
okay.
and it was a John Romita senior cover. And then the second comic that I remember getting, again, another one of those Marvel Comics Presents Spider-Man things. This time it was a McFarlane cover,
Mm.
and like those things got me hooked as a kid, and it's like I really didn't know what I was looking at reading at the time, but now it's like looking back, it's like okay, I see how this like grabbed my attention and why I got influenced by this stuff early on.
And that's what I loved about Marvel Comic Presents, especially when they got towards the '90s, right? They'd have 4 stories in that book, and you'd be looking like, all right, there, it would hook you in every story, so you'd want to get the next one. And then where I lived at, we didn't have a comic shop. We had a spinner rack, and then you had a
Mm-hmm.
drugstore.
Yep.
And so if it didn't show up on the spinner rack, you weren't getting it. If it didn't show up at the drugstore, you didn't get it. So you're praying that they would get that one book, that you want to continue to keep reading. I remember trying to read Batman like that, and I'd be missing like 2 to 3 issues in between.
Yep.
I'm like, this is killing me because Jim Aparo was doing the artwork at that time, and I was like, oh, I'm loving how all this is going. I'm like, and then you get to the next book, you're like, what happened 4 issues ago?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was like I was that was just like mind blowing when I was a kid. Like um, I think I was maybe in fourth grade. Um, so probably like 91, 92 ish, something like that. Like all my comics came from the drugstore, the grocery store, whatever until that point. And then, one of the kids I was in class with, we were talking about comic books and stuff. And he was like, yeah, my mom took me to the comic book store. And I was like, what? There's a comic book store? There's a place that just sells comic books? And so it was like after school, it was like, you know, like get your mom to tell my mom about where this is at and where to go. And then I think that maybe the next week or something, my mom took me there. And, at that time, comics were relatively cheap. And the store owners or whatever asked if I wanted to get a pull list. And it was right as the Maximum Carnage storyline was starting up.
Mm, yeah, Bagley and Michelini.
Yep. So I got a pull list of all the Spider-Man stuff for probably that year, and then like after like buying all those books, it was like okay, yeah, we're gonna stop this for a little bit.
Mom is like, that's enough.
Yeah, yeah, and then once I was old enough, like it was like when I was in junior high, that's when I really like got into it like big time. Like I was like really itching to get stuff and whatnot. I started up a pull list again, but by that time I was at least, had some sort of, you know, side job thing I was doing as a kid to where I could actually pay for my own comics, and that would be like the weekly trip of like, okay, it's Wednesday, let's go to the comic book store. So yeah, it was like that. That all got me hooked, and that's it's crazy because around that time it's like all the stuff I was picking up was like a lot of the stuff that now it's like, um, it's some of the folks I'm working with. So it's just kind of like it's come full circle in a way. It's like, oh, cool. I was reading these things when I was a kid, and now I'm working with some of these folks.
It's kind of a surreal moment, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it
like
absolutely is.
because like I remember when I got to meet Neil Adams for the first time because he was my favorite artist, and I was like, I was in San Diego, and I'm like, dude, it's Neil Adams. It was Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, they had Dan Jurgens was there, and I was like, and Louise Simonson was there. I'm like, holy crap, you killed Superman, you made Green Lantern popular again, and then you're the one who also tried to destroy Batman. And I'm like, this is cool. And it was kind of one of like that nerd out moment that we all have, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like, huh? And he's like, come sit down. And I sat down with Neil Adams for like 30 minutes just talking about books. And and he's way older than I am. I'm still a kid. This is, a long time ago. And he just like telling me like all the stories from like the 70s and 80s and like how it went through. I'm like, this is awesome. I could sit there for hours and hours just listening to that. But I remember I had him do a sketch for me, and it was just a simple Green Lantern, Green Arrow sketch, right? And he did that for me, and I paid for it and got out of there. But then he comes, yells at me. He says, "I'm not done with that. Give me that back here. Give me that back." And so he grabs and he starts coloring it. Actually, colors it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I mean, this is early 2000, right? So it's not like before everything got expensive in the con world. But he does that, gives it to me. He's like, "You like it?" I was like, "Dude, I love this. This is freaking awesome." Because I told him, like, your book is the first book that got me into comic books, being Batman and Green Lantern. I'm like, dude, that's why I'm here. And met him, such a great dude. Met up with him in LA as well because he had his own store, the Krusty Bunker store. Great people that worked there. They still have it. But then, of course, he passed away a couple years ago. So um, it was one of those surreal moments for me to actually sit down and talk to him and then getting to know him and his family. Like I've been friends with their family for a while, and it's full circle. It's that thing like, we're all connected. We might not be as connected as we think we are, but you kind of are. Just peel back that onion and you start looking at it.
Yep, yep. It's crazy how like big yet small the community is. It's just bizarre in ways. And I've definitely had several of those moments where going to eat or going to get drinks after the con, and some of the folks I'm sitting there with, it's like, man, if I could go back in time and tell my 12-year-old self that this is what you're going to be doing at one point in time, that kind of thing.
I mean, for me, I think about like for me, like I'm retired military, so I retired military, and I work, another job now. But to go back to think about in the '90s when I picked up X-Men 1, right, and X-Men 2, to say, hey Nate, in 25 years, you're still going to be reading the same kind of books that you were reading before, right? But you're going to be working with artists and writers now. It's completely different.
Oh
That's
yeah.
what I love. That's what I love about it. And I think one of the reasons why this is why I love independent versus mainstream is because of that, right? Like you getting to sit down to talk to Jim Lee, Frank Cho and those guys. That takes a little bit of time and work, right? Like being able to know them on that kind of level. But in the '90s and 2000s, it wasn't that way. Like
Right.
you'd go up to them, like this is Jim Lee. He's in charge of Image, at the time. He did all the X-Men books, and I loved it. You got to meet him. Him and Claremont signed my books and stuff, from then. But now it's like to go see him, and you have to wait in line for like 5 or 6 hours, and it's like, you know what? I'm not going to do that because that's how the big two, big three kind of are now. It's like they've got to that point, and good on them, right? I'm not. I don't have any ill will toward them. It's just they're not reachable now, right? Like we
Right.
are in the independent stage, right? Like I can reach out to you, I can reach out to Don McTeague, I can talk to Marat, I can talk to pretty much anybody from all of our companies, and have a conversation with it. And we have fun. We have fun doing this stuff, and that's what I appreciate about the independent scene compared to the mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely different. Like I remember that early 2000s when getting into this stuff and going to cons, it was people were definitely more accessible. Um, like you mentioned Jim Lee. I remember it was I think it was the first con I went to. I went to Wizard World Chicago. It was like one of the first ones that Wizard took over the Chicago Comic Con. And Jim Lee was just there signing at the DC booth. Like, I just walked up to him, had him sign a couple of books. Hey, nice to meet you. Thank you. And, whatever. Now, yeah, like it would be a long line to get that signature. Um, it's just crazy how things have just evolved over the last, like, it seems like the last, like, 15 years, it's just exploded.
And it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, right? Like we've got a lot of talent in the field now, and so you've got to really make your mark now in that field. Like
Yeah.
saying, "This is what I do. This is what I can provide you. Hey, come tap me when you got a cover, or come tap me if you want me to be your editor for writing." Those kind of things. It's all about relationships now, right? It's about the relationships you have with companies, with publishers. They know your work ethic. They know what you can do and how you can support them. So it's great to see the way it is, but it's hard at the same time, right? Because there's so many people now that produce comics. I mean, if you look on Kickstarter, you just type in comics, you're going to see thousands of Kickstarters for comic books. So how do you push your thing above that to make it more attainable and reachable to more people? Is by having a good product. That's what it all comes down to. You have that good product, it'll push it out, and then everybody's going to enjoy it, and they're going to keep coming back. I always harp on customer base, but I also harp on quality base, right? If it's a good quality book, I'm always going to come back and look at it and read it. If the cover's good, I'm going to definitely visually see it and know that that's something I want to keep buying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm kind of the same way when it comes to like what seems to be few and far between anymore of like getting to walk into a comic shop and picking up books or the stuff I decide to back on Kickstarter. It's like, I look at, okay, what's the cover, and then, if I'm in the comic shop, it's like, okay, who did the interior art, who's writing it. For me, most of the time, like, yeah, it's all art based. Like, okay, what's the interior look like, and it's like, do I want to read this? Like, sometimes it's like, okay, the cover's cool, but the inside is not quite my bag.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for me, but other people enjoying it, have at it. And like that's the same way I try to approach them when I'm doing anything I'm working on. It's like, I want to make this look as good as I can. And I always kind of view a lot of this stuff as like, I want to make the stuff that I want to see, what I want to read. Like if I was walking into a comic shop or looking at Kickstarter or whatever, I want to make that thing something that I would pick up, because I know there's a whole bunch more people out there that are thinking the same way I am that are going to go after it. And that seems to be the thing. That seems to be um, the stuff that I find works best for me, and I think is more successful, is when I've got that approach where it's like, I've done this. People can see the time and effort that went into it and all that, because it's this particular thing that I enjoy. And I again try to put that into everything I do, but sometimes when it's somebody asks me to do something, it's like I'm still going to put my best effort into it, but it might be something I'm unfamiliar with. It's like, you know might not be the thing everybody gravitates towards. Like I kind of like use the as just kind of a like a guide or whatever. It's like, okay, if people are liking this stuff on Facebook, for example, it's like if I did a sketch of He-Man and everybody's loving it, cool, something I love doing. But if I do a sketch of, like, I don't know, Superman, like, there's so many iterations of Superman after 80 plus years of Superman. It's like, and where's my Superman stand against all those other Supermans?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's some things where it's like, this is my niche, this is what I can do, and this is what I'm going to try to carve a bigger niche of, making this my own thing.
And that's the hard part. It's really making your own niche and then seeing it grow, and then also being able to have fun with it at the same time, right? Like
Yeah.
there's that part of, I want to have fun with this, but I also have it as a business, and I also want to make money off of it at the same time. But there's a gray area in there, right? It's like you will give up some of the money, you will give up some of the time to make that product the best it can be, because you know why? It's ultimately going to help people, and they're going to like it a lot more.
Yep.
Um, And so I've seen many places like, for example, like this book here, right? It's $25, right? And it's like, all right, if I see it at a convention today outside of the Swornfest, right? That book's going to be a $35, $40 book,
Right.
because it was a convention exclusive only, right? But I know for a fact I can't do that to my friend, right? If my friend says, "Hey, I want to buy that book," I'm going to sell it to you at cost of what it was, because that's what we do to help out one another. And then it builds those relationships. It builds
Yep.
those things to say, "All right, here's my customer base. Here's the people I have. Here's what I can do to support them." Um, and it's not always about making money. It's
Yep.
not. It's about doing what's right and being able to have fun with it, just like the Scarlet Hunters. Like I've read the first one. Like I want to see that in color. Like I want to see the first book in color. And it's like, someday hopefully you can do that.
That is a long term goal. I would like to do a trade collecting that first story arc, and I kind of want to go back and remaster the first two issues because they're in black and white, and it's going to be an undertaking, but I do want to do it. So I'm trying to make it viable to do. Hence all doing the Kickstarter stuff. It's a hopefully that will come around to where I've got the ability to do it, because you're not the only person that's asked me to do that.
Mhm.
And again, it's something I want to see. So it's like I want to make it happen, and it's just getting to the how do I make it happen.
And it's time, right? It's like having the time to do that. I mean, it's one thing to do a cover, but when you're doing 16 pages interior or coloring, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Yep.
Interior versus covers.
Yep.
And I know you've done both. You've done interiors and you've done covers, but I've seen the stretcher guys that do it on the inside, and it takes them a while because everything's different. Every panel's different, so you've got to take the time to make it look good.
Yeah. Yeah, and with it being my own book, it's one of those things where it's like I got to take the time away to do this from working on something else that might be something that's paying, or whatever the case is. So it's like I gotta weigh my options. Do I want to go see a movie this weekend, or do I want to work on the book? It's like got to see which one wins out at certain times. Um, and again, it's like trying with all this stuff that we're doing to run the successful Kickstarters and all that kind of stuff to hopefully afford that ability to be like, hey, I'm gonna take Tuesday next week, and I'm gonna color 2 pages just so I can get the ball rolling. There's things like that eventually get the job done, give me that point. So it's just getting there and getting it done, and having something I'm gonna be at least somewhat happy with, because I gotta sit there and look at it and go, how can I fix 20-year-old artwork?
And how do you make it updated to today's standards, right?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah,
way things was back then, like things look different than the way they do now.
yeah,
Everybody wants the shading, they want the darker inks and the shadows and the things like that. It's like, but they still want to see the person. They want to see what's in the backgrounds. It's like
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
balance thing.
Yep. So it's like I gotta be very um careful is not the word I'm looking for. I gotta make sure I have some really good time management and get somebody behind me going, hey, dummy, stop spending all your time fixing something that doesn't really need to be fixed, or whatever, so that it makes a cohesive thing when it's all said and done to put it into a trade. Um, but not going overkill on doing fixes basically.
And you guys are your worst critics, right? Because you think I don't like this. It's not right. It's not right. And we're all just like, dude, that looks phenomenal. Just leave it the way it is. You're fine.
Right, right,
It's like
right.
just keep going.
The only analogy I can come up with is I'm basically I want to go back in and do a Star Wars special edition with those first couple of books, and I'm sure I'm going to get grief on both sides of that, but it's one of those things where it's like I've got the ability. I definitely want to go back in and fix some of these things so it works better, because I will freely admit back when we started it, we had no idea what we were doing.
And it's funny. Like, I'm an original art guy, so I collect everything. Blue line, white. 11 by 17. but I also do get some of the colored versions as well as done. And that's the thing, right? We all know that from that black and white sketch cover to the ink to the colored lines, there's a lot can get messed up in between, or a lot of things can be brought out that makes it 100 times better, right? And we've all seen how color does good and it does bad.
Yeah.
Um, and from a 20-year-old thing, there might be things that have to get fixed from just the pencil side, right?
Yeah.
Just to go back and look at, like, does that really make sense, right? Of what we're doing now. Should our arm be this way or this way? You know.
Yeah. Oh, and there's definitely stuff because I have to go back in and reference that stuff every so often. For telling the story. And it's like, oh man, I need to go back in and fix this. I need to go back in and change that. I need to I think because we've had to reprint it over the years and we've made it available um online through like drive through comics and stuff. It's like I think we've re-lettered those first two books like 4 times a piece, something like that.
Dang.
Um, because we weren't happy with how it turned out the first time. Because again, we had no idea. We were just diving into this thing head first, going, okay, let's make this happen. Um, and we realized when it went to doing the digital thing with drive through, like the specific file formats and stuff they asked for, it's like the files just like they were compressed so much and stuff, it just messed
Mm,
with the lettering. And so like we had to go back in and redo it. And we also had to redo it for when we switched to a different printer. We needed something specific and different about it. So it's like those things have, at least as far as the lettering goes, has been redone a few times. But I haven't got a chance to go back in and play with the artwork and make it more so that it's kind of improved upon up to more of this the quality that I think I could produce now versus what I did then.
and that's what's kind of nice, especially like with this Kickstarter, right, that you got going on today, is that you actually have an add-on for that for the first box, and that's what's kind of nice. So if people want to get in and read the whole arc, this is your perfect opportunity, and it's $10 a book. It's $60 for to get the whole catch-up series. So I highly recommend it, to everybody. Definitely get in there on that. And you're doing remarks as well as
Yep.
add-ons, I saw. So how much are your remarks going on for as an add-on?
Uh, I believe they're priced at 30, the same way I would do it at Metacon or doing at an event, that type of thing. I don't think we bumped it up because of Kickstarter fees or anything. If we did, I don't think it's any more than 40, but I think we kept it at the 30 price.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, like you said, you can add on the back issues of Scarlet Huntress so you can get caught up before we do the next one. Um, Trying to think of what else we made available. We tried to keep this one really small and simple because it's the art
Mm,
book. We didn't want to do like bombard you with here's an option with prints and yada yada yada. Like we do have a stretch goal for doing like a book plate print. It'll be like a 6x9 size print of the covers. Um, and I think we picked like there's a sticker, there's the prints, there's more pages, and I think a magnet, something like that. We've got a few stretch goals planned out. Um, but again, trying to make it simple because we're going a different route. We're not, it's not telling a story this time around, so it's a
mm,
little bit of a different market to hit. You know, the people that have backed the stuff before, they were always going after a story and going after all the other stuff that might go with it. Our book is like, yeah, what do you throw in here? Because there's so much different stuff. It's not like we did with Scarlet, where it was like, hey, she's a bartender, and during the day, like let's throw in stuff like a koozie and a pen and stuff that bartenders would have. Like we did a bottle opener, things
yeah.
like that. That made sense. This, it's like, okay, it's got to be art related. It's got to be cost effective, for doing these packages because we don't know what the quantities are going to be like when it's all said and done. So it's like we try to make it something fun. That's why we went more with the added pages because it's like, okay, if you're going after this for the artwork, let's give you more artwork.
All right. And that's what I like is I'm showing up here, the stretch goals, 2,000 for the bookmark, 35 for the book plate, print, the 6 additional pages, and magnet, and 6. So they have an opportunity to have 12 total pages if it
Yeah,
hits 2K. So, I mean, that's a good goal. I mean, I saw your last Kickstarter. I mean, y'all did fairly well in the last Scarlet Hunters too. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I hope that you at least get to that level that you did last time.
I would like to. Like I said, it's been a little bit of a struggle on being able to promote this thing. The nice thing with like when we're doing a an actual comic book, there's a lot of places I can go and spread the word and be like, hey, here's our new issue of our book. They're not so keen on like, here's a new art book. It doesn't quite go into that indie comics realm of I'm not telling a story in this thing or anything of that nature that would people gravitate towards. So it's a little bit more of a struggle trying to get the word out through like social media and stuff because it's like trying to base it all on making a post like, hey, this is this campaign's running, go check it out, blah blah blah, and it's like, does anybody see it? Am I talking into the void?
Yeah, I know how that is. Like even Justin Hunt, right?
Yes.
So Justin, he had the same issue with when his art book came out, right? Is that he's trying to you have to self promote, to get it out there, and it's the same thing. I mean, it just a lot of people like they know your artwork, but do they really want to buy an art book
Right,
with it
right.
in it? And it's like, for me, I love seeing it because then I get all your artwork in one stop, right? And this is volume one, so it tells me, and I know you have hundreds of covers and interior stuff that you've done. So we know that volume there could be two, three, four. I mean, heck, look at Jamie Tyndall and how many books Jamie has for just sketchbooks and art books, right? Because of the volume that he's done. To me, I appreciate those kind of books. Steph Wilson does it, with Carrie Ann. Like I love that, and I wish more people would do it. Because it's kind of nice to have that portfolio of your art in my hand.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a big collector of it. Like I've got a whole bookshelf in my studio dedicated to art books that I've picked up over the years. And um, I love it when people make that stuff available. And I wanted to do it because I like having it. I like to make it available. Had people ask me for it for the last few years, and it's like, okay, here it is. Here's like one big package of like I think the first couple of times we did like an art book, like doing a little sketchbook, we did like the little ash can size sketchbooks to take to
Mhm.
cons, and we print like maybe 25 of them, something like that, and they went over really well. But now it's like, okay, let's do something a little bit more along the lines of what we'd like actually like to see, like again the stuff that I would like to buy. Like let's make that available. Let's see how it works out. And yeah, we've definitely got enough put together right now to have 3 volumes, each at 84 plus pages. And I'm continually doing more stuff. Heck, in the last 3 months, basically since the start of the new year, I knocked out like 30 some odd sketch covers that could be thrown into the mix to be in one of the next art books. Been trying to crank through those to have them for convention season, plus some stuff that's coming up with Clan McDonald. So it's trying to make sure I've got all these things available, um, and just having fun drawing stuff that I don't ordinarily get a chance to draw. And like, all right, I'm gonna play around and here's like the one thing that got a lot of people is I did Lion-O and Conan on the
Mhm.
same sketch cover, and they're like, what? Like having fun.
Exactly. Well, it's like when you see people do remarks that has nothing to do with that cover, right? And they're like, "Why?" Because I can.
Yep.
Because I wanted to. And it's like, you know what? That just makes it like even like I had Jim Hanna, not Jim Scott Hanna. He did a commission for a guy, and the guy kind of bailed on it, right? And so Steven had put it out there, so I picked it up, and it was a venomized Freddy Krueger.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'm like, and it's just like this is completely different, but I dig it, right? Like it's just something different that
yeah.
nobody's ever done. Everybody does venomized stuff all the time,
Right.
but I'm like, nobody does the horror people. So I'm like, you know what? I might make this an annual thing. I'm like, hey, let's go do another one. Keep doing, and it's because it's different and because it was fun, And I was like, I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's like, again, that's the stuff I like to play around with. And if I've got some spare time to do something, I'm gonna have some fun. I want to draw a character. I want to do whatever kind of anything to go with it. Like I'm gonna have a blast. And that's what I did with a bunch of the sketch covers I've done. It's like this might not be everybody's cup of tea of my character choices that I'm picking here, but I know there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be interested in it.
Mm.
So it's, you know, it's my chance to just kind of break away, do my own thing. And it's like, okay, you know, I killed a couple hours here doing this. You know, it goes in the portfolio to take to the next con. And then, you know, then I'll have to sit there and go, okay, now what do I draw next? It's like, you know, what's the new hot thing that everybody's gonna want that potentially might get sold if I do a sketch of it? And, you know, rack my brain and be like, yeah, that's kind of boring. I'm gonna go back to doing something else.
Yeah. And it's like, you saw everybody that was doing the Taylor Swift covers, right? Like a
Right.
couple weeks ago for the Super Bowl. And it's like everybody did it. Ryan did a phenomenal one. I
Yeah.
loved what Ryan did. And so did Lauren Wright. I was like, I loved how those turned out. And I said, y'all, you're at the right time at the right place to put these right. It's like, and we all know that, this too, right? It's a trend kind of thing, right? Like
Yep.
if it's trending, it's going to sell, right?
Yep.
And it's like, and so if you want in the comic world, that's a perfect time for Do You Poo and Harley Finn.
Yep.
It really is. It's like go jump on it and do the cover and push it out. And I love seeing that kind of stuff because it gives artists and people an avenue to do something different that they've never
Mhm.
done before, right? And it's like it expands your portfolio of tool sets that you have to be able to do something and know how to do it and be able to do it again. So when somebody calls in and you says, "Hey, can you draw me a Taylor Swift and a Kelch?" Sure thing, I can.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's stuff like that that, like you said, it's that trend, the you know, whatever the new hot thing is for the week. It's like, okay, how do I possibly jump on that? Like, I always get baffled by, and I shouldn't be baffled because it's stuff that I do. It's just I don't always have the time to do it myself. It's like, you know, a movie trailer comes out for, you know, new Batman movie or the
Mhm.
new the Avengers or whatever, and the next day, you know, you got like 100 sketches from everybody drawing, you know, the new character, the new costume, and all that stuff. It's like, how the heck did you get that done so fast? Like, I haven't even had time to scribble something in my sketchbook to get an idea for what I want to do with that. But I mean, that's somehow sometimes that's how you got to jump on this stuff. Like, you know, whatever character becomes like the new hot thing for the week, the month, the year, whatever. It's like, okay, you know, X-Men 97's on. It's like, okay,
Oh
well,
yeah.
which character is going to be the big thing that everybody's going to want? Do I draw Cyclops? Do I draw Wolverine? Do I draw Magneto? You know, like those kind of things. And it's like I can sit there and try to chase that. And don't get me wrong, I've definitely tried to chase that at times, but sometimes like you can't keep up with it. So it's like, I like Wolverine. I'm gonna draw Wolverine. If people like
Yep.
Wolverine, they're gonna go after Wolverine. If I get time, I'll throw in a Magneto or, you know, something else that's not the first thing I'm gonna gravitate towards.
And that's like for me, right? I'm a huge Wolverine fan, always have been. But it's like that's kind of the thing where the story killed Wolverine for me in the like about 10 years ago when they killed him, right? And he said he's dead and he's not coming back. And I'm like, okay, I can see that. They let his daughter, his X-23 become the new Wolverine. But that's how a lot of storytelling has killed characters, right,
Yeah,
over the years. Is like and because of the trend that they were going through. That's when Marvel was doing 8,000 books for one crossover, and that's how they alienated a lot of us fans because of that. It's like I don't want to spend $1,000 on a Wednesday, on books. I want to
right,
spend
right.
$100, 200. Okay, I'm okay with that. That's normal, especially after retailer incentives and whatever. But I don't want to read 1,000 books just to get the one story. Um, and so what I'm hoping is like when we have things like X-Men 97 that come out, right? Like we have people that are bringing covers and things like that, that people understand that it is a trend and it is there to make money, but it's also for you guys to have something different to do because it lets you guys do something different that you wouldn't have done before. And so
Yeah,
it's a good like growth for me when I see it. Like I've seen I think it was Sora. Sora did Rogue, so she did a Rogue, and that turned out phenomenal. I loved it. Um, but it's just one of those things like you've got to do something that keeps yourself in the spotlight, but it's also got to be something that you want to do too at the
yeah,
same time.
yeah, it's definitely one of those things where like if if I were to sit there and do sketch something I didn't enjoy or whatever, and that was like the trend for the week, and then it's like then you kind of get pigeonholed in a way. It's like everybody wants a sketch of I don't know, take a pick of whatever character, and it's like well, I don't really want to draw that character a bunch more. Like um especially when people are like wanting stuff from movies where their costumes are just super intricate, and it's like everybody wants Cap, and like
Mm.
even Cap's costume has got like a ton of detail on it, and it's like I don't want to draw that much.
Well, it's like remember when Rob Liefeld did the Heroes Reborn and Return series, right? In the Cap and the Iron Man, and like you see all the feather cuts, in Cap's suit, right? That takes a lot of time. That's a lot of detail to go through
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of stuff. And it's like, even if you're just the inker, trying to ink that is a fun thing, but then trying to color over it, good luck. Without washing out some of it too, because you want to make
right,
sure
right,
there's a fine balance there of like you want to keep those kind of lines because that's what it's kind of the stroke of the color, but it's like, man, that's a lot. That takes a long time to do that versus a little bitty guy about yay big on the on the corner of a panel, right? So it makes a
right,
lot of
right. Yeah, yeah. There's like all sorts of that stuff comes into play when doing any of this stuff, and it's like, um, I love. Don't get me wrong, I love drawing detail. It's like, um, I guess it kind of comes down to like what the character is, what they're doing, and it's like, yeah, something like Cap where I can go crazy with drawing all those the scales or whatever on the armor or the chainmail he's got. um I'll do that versus like trying to draw the movie costume where it's got all the like
mm,
pinstriping of all the different materials coming together, and all the little uh, doodads all over. It's like this is kind of crazy to do for a line art drawing.
yeah. It's like when you see like a classic Wolverine cover costume, right, versus the X-Men, 2000. I'm like, huh?
Yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah.
Huh? I'm like, but then you got to think of it too. Like spandex probably doesn't really work too easily in the real world versus comic world like that. I'm like, but you know what? Deadpool did it, so let's do it.
Right,
I'm
right.
like,
All the stuff they've shown of that, it looks like it works out really well. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and I'm gonna have to wait because it comes out while we're at San Diego, so I won't get to see it
mm,
probably until we get back home.
yeah, same here. I mean, the last movie I saw in the theater was Endgame. That tells you how long it's been since I've been to a theater. Because hey, I have 5 reasons why
Right,
that keep
right.
me home. But so usually I end up buying it on 4K or Blu-ray and watching it, or unless it gets streamed, and then I'll watch it. But it's like there's so many movies that are coming out this year that I want to see, and it's like, is this the year where I actually just knuckle down and go back to a theater?
Right, right.
It's like because they got the first Omen coming out. I kind of want to see that one, and we've got the Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm like, depends on what happens. And
Yeah.
Beetlejuice 2. It's like, I mean, I about lost it when I saw the trailer for Beetlejuice 2. I'm like, oh my gosh, Michael Keaton, Christina Ricci, the mom, and I mean, everybody's back there. So I'm like, this is gonna be a good one. This will be a good season for movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Like I'm still itching. I want to go see the Godzilla Kong movie that just came out.
Hmm.
So it's like okay, when can we find some free time to go check that out? And then it seems like there's something coming out almost like every other week that like it's like ooh, I kind of want to see that one. Kind of want to see that one. And it's like
Dune 2 just came out.
yeah,
It's like, but do I want to sit that long in a theater? I rather sit at my couch for that
yeah,
long.
yeah. I did go see Dune 2. It's good. It's got a lot more stuff going on than the first one did. Um, and it is a spectacle to see on the big screen. We went and saw it in IMAX so we could take it all in, but um, it is definitely a long movie. It's a long time to sit in that theater seat. Um, but it was like, okay, we got time. Let's go do it. So yeah, it's like trying to figure out when schedules are going to line up when some of the stuff comes out. It's like all right, can we go see it when it opens, or is it going to be like spoiled on the internet by the time we get to go see it? Whatever.
And that's like for me, when I go to a movie, I mean, it's like they can have all the reviews out in the world. I kind of take it with a grain of salt, and I'm
Yep.
like, I always make my own opinion. Like now there is some truly bad movies. Don't get me wrong, there are some bad movies out there, and I'm a horror guy, so I will watch pretty much any horror movie. There's some horror movies I will not watch because they're that bad, and I've heard.
Right. Right.
I'm like, that just looks dumb. I'm not gonna go watch that one. But it's fun to sit in the theater, but at the same time, it's like if it's 3 hours or 4 hours, that takes a lot of time. And then I'm thinking that's daycare or babysitter time, and
Right. Right. Right.
I'm like, well, I can do that at home. But yeah, I'm probably gonna make the trek probably for the first Omen because that one. I mean, I was a huge Omen fan in the '80s and '90s when it came out, so I'm like, we'll have to see how this goes. Hopefully, they don't destroy it like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre did.
Yeah. 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 It's gonna be interesting to see some of the stuff because like you mentioned Beetlejuice. Like I'm looking forward to seeing that. Hopefully that will live up to the hype and be a good sequel. Um, Same with like all the other stuff coming out, like the new Planet of the Apes is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, my dog is knocking on the studio door.
Well, it's time to. Um, did you get a chance to see Monarch the series?
Yes,
Okay.
I really like that. I thought that was great. Like I love Kurt Russell,
Hmm.
and to see how they played that off with his son coming in and playing the younger version, that was brilliant. Um, but the like tying all those movies together through the whole thing with Monarch, that was brilliant.
That was so smart. And then, so I'm waiting to see what season two is going to be like, right? Because they're already kind of saying like, all right, she stayed. The grandmother stayed in the portal areas. It's like that's not over. That
Yeah,
they're going to figure out something to go back and get her somehow.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious to see how they're going to play that out, and is it going to tie into any of the movies? Like, are we going to get like even more crossover? Like, we've got Monarch and what's the other company called? Apex, I think.
Apex, yeah,
Like, they're in the movie and they've got their set of employees or whatever that's there. But are we going to see like that family or any of them cross over and show up in something in the future? Um, I don't know. I thought the characters were really well done, like the story, and again, just that connection between everything with like, okay, now we see how these guys connect. We see how it builds into what was it? It was King of the Monsters and Kong versus
mhm,
Godzilla. Like it all tied that nice together.
yep,
So it's like, okay, where do we go and like how can we work some more of this in? Because like I don't know, I felt like with like the like King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong, it was like they focused too much a little bit on some of the characters, and like I just want to see the monsters fight. But
yeah,
um, Monarch did the opposite. It was like, okay, I'm digging where these characters are doing. I want to see more of them, and I want to see how they're interacting with these monsters because they gave it
mhm,
like a more cohesive thing of like, here's how they're connected and why they're connected and all this mess, and it made for a really good story. And it's like, put some more of that in the movies, and I think I'm going to be even more entertained. Now, I've enjoyed all the movies, but those are my like nitpicks of like, give me more monster fight. I don't need to see the kids running around town.
exactly. And it's like with Cole with on Kong Skull Island, right? With John Goodman, I'm like, dude, that was perfect. The way they
Yeah,
set that up, I was like, so he's the same guy that died in the movie because he threw the stuff over the side of the thing. So he would, he knew he was dying, but then it kind of translates back. I'm like, that was, it was it's how Agents of Shield should have been done, right? Like
yeah,
for the MCU, like
yeah,
it made perfect sense why they were going back and forth in the time areas to explain like where did Monarch come from to what they're doing today to who should be doing what, and it's like this is why they're doing what they're doing, and then like the dad trying to stop a 0 day from happening again. It's like
yeah,
I love that part. Like when you can interchange that story into it, it made it so much fun for me.
yeah, yeah. And like that's again, that's where I would like to see some of the movie stuff. Like take from that and build that in there, just to give us a little bit more insight into how it's all like building up or whatever. Because like it was cool with like how they tied in the Apex thing with bringing out Mechagodzilla. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, let's give us the backstory of how some of that stuff was built into it. Like, okay, now like where are these characters at? What are they doing? And like it looks, I haven't seen the new Kong Godzilla thing, but you know, it looks like they're working with Kong, and you know, they're teaming up and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, how's that gonna like build off and like do the next season of Monarch? Are like we gonna see some aftermath? Are we still gonna be in the time period before it? You know, all that stuff. Um, and like I don't know, I'm just very intrigued to see all this and how they get everything finally connected, because they did so well in that show that, you know, if they build that up in the movie some more, I think it'll just add to all of it.
I think so. I mean, as long as you don't bring Godzilla Jr. into it, I think we'll be okay. You know.
Godzilla Jr. and what was the big robot guy's name?
Oh, the helper robot. I know you're talking about. Excuse me.
Well, there was the helper robot, and then there was the guy that was he was kind of like Ultraman type robot that Godzilla fought in one of the movies.
What? That was from the 70s era. That's from the Heisei era. Yeah.
Okay.
Not the Showa. I'm trying to remember.
He had a goofy name, and I'm just blanking on it right now. I can see like the still image that's on Max, because they got all the old movies on there, and I'm like totally brain farting on it. But you know, like I don't quite want to see that, but I wouldn't mind a crossover with Godzilla and all those monsters and Pacific Rim.
Or bring Gamera into it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I would love, you know, bring the supersized turtle into it and see what he does.
Right.
You know, you say Godzilla versus Kong versus Gamera. Oh yeah, I'm in for that.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like it would be like King of Monsters all over again, right? Like they're gonna go fight Ghidorah. You know, it's like,
right.
Come on out, not Ghidorah. Let's do Rodan. You know, Mothra. We've seen some of Mothra, but not a whole lot. You know, so
Right.
put her back into it. You know, it's like show her. You know, there's a lot.
Like,
there's a lot of characters they've not used yet.
Oh yeah. There's so many. Bring some of that stuff in. Get, you know, I'm sure they could continue this movie series for a while, and you know, do a little back and forth. You know, introduce a couple of them in Monarch, bring them into the movie. You know, back and forth. And then, like I said, like I do a crossover with the whole Pacific Rim thing with the Jaegers trying to fight off some of those creatures. You know, like or like ultimate fanboy nerd out. Like if we're gonna do giant robots fighting monsters, like give us some Voltron.
Exactly. Bring Voltron, Mazinger, you know, something like that into it and be like, all right, Shogun Warriors, go beat them up.
Right.
You know, now we're telling our ages now.
Right. Like give us some of that. Like I would definitely pay good money to see that. Like give me a full on Voltron movie, and they're fighting some of those giant roe beasts or whatever, and like you know, 2 hours of a popcorn flick where I can see the 5 lines coming together.
Oh yeah, and you know it would either be done right or done completely wrong, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we know how this is going to go. Like it would either be really cool the way to make it look combining and everything, doing a slow motion kind of like coming up, like, or it's going to be that cheesy, like, oh yeah, here we go.
Right. Yeah, I would hope somebody could put it together and do it right. Like Netflix had that series a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They had, what, I think 4 or 5 seasons, something like
Yeah,
that.
the Legendary Defenders season, yeah.
And the story in that was great. I thought they updated what they had in the 80s, and it was like really well done. The animation was good. Like, and the story built over time. It wasn't just like it was like, okay, monster of the week and we're done. It was like there was substance to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, find a way to do that in live action. Like, you know, give us something cool, and you know, like you were saying, like how, you know, making it look cool with the lines coming together. Like, they made Iron Man putting on his armor look cool. Like, take some cues from that.
Yeah, and take your time to build it right. Right. Like,
Yeah.
don't push out a movie like Dragon Ball Evolution.
Right. Right.
It's like, yeah, I get it. Dragon Ball is really big at this time, but that was not the movie. And Akira Toriyama said this was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, there's a reason he said that, because it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know.
I never took time to watch it because I saw how many people reacted to it and like, no, not gonna do it.
Almost as bad was the new Power Rangers movie that came out. Like, it was like, all right, y'all just killed the Power Rangers. Even by bringing some of the original into them, like, y'all couldn't save that turd on that one.
Oh, jeez, I didn't see that one either. That one was kind of like the well, when it's on TV, I might watch it, and I've yet to do it.
I don't waste your time. Save yourself the 2 hours. Go watch something better. All right, Sean, dude, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight, man. We can definitely do this again, especially when you have the next Kickstarter, or if you just want to come and hang out. We always have fun here. Um, so what's up next for you after the Kickstarter? What's your kind of project/con list look like for this year?
So let's see. I've got C2E2 at the end of this month. And the Thursday before the con starts, I'll be at Clan McDonald. Marat and I will be doing an in-store event. And we'll wrap up the Kickstarter there at C2E2. And then after that, I will be at Colossal Con, which is a anime based con in like northern Ohio. If you're familiar with Cedar Point, it's in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be going to Garden State Comic Fest in New Jersey. Then I got San Diego Comic Con. I think that's kind of it for my con schedule right now. I think it wraps up at San Diego. I did apply for New York, so we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. And for Comic Con, I'm hoping to have the the con edition of the next issue of Scarlet Huntress. It'll be Volume 2, Issue 1. We'll do a con exclusive version of it. And then hopefully later in the year, if things work out, we will launch a Kickstarter to have a full edition of it. Basically, there's going to be kind of two stories going at once in the book. It'll be Scarlet, and I'll put out some more information on it. She'll be coming up with some new stuff after we finished up that first story arc. There's going to be a new villain, so you're going to see a little bit of aspect from that story and kind of the ongoing search that she's doing. So it's going to be kind of like two little things. So the new villain parts will be the stuff that get added in, because the rest of it's like I came up with this idea of Scarlet meeting some other cryptids and whatnot that I wanted to play up. So we've got it. I think our game plan is try to do 4 or 5 issues of this story to build up both stories kind of simultaneously.
That'll be fun. You know me, I'll read it. As soon as you put it out, I'll read it.
Awesome. Yeah, so I've got all that underway. I know already on tap I've got a couple more poo covers in the inbox to work on. And there's some more stuff coming up with Coffin. I just finished one yesterday. So there'll be some more Lady Death stuff coming this way.
Woohoo!
There's a couple of odds and ends that I don't think I can mention yet. Doing some independent projects with some other folks. And I'm still waiting on getting the release date, but I did a fun sketch card set a couple months back that I'm still waiting to hear when it gets released. It was something that I definitely took on just because it was going to be fun and part of my childhood, but that's the only reason I really took it on, because it's like not really something I wanted to do, but it was like when I saw the property, it's like I got to do this. So that should be at any point in time now, because it was done months ago. So hopefully that'll be out in the wild soon.
I love those cards. I mean, Bianca Thompson does it too for her Kickstarter, with Artists Elite. So I always try to support. She just did the one for Russell. And so I was like, all right, let me support Russell, because he was doing this big donation thing. And I was like, okay, anytime I can get a good sketch card for that price, I'm all for it. And they were really reasonable. And sketch cards are one of the things people that you got to understand is like It's this big.
Right.
Trying to draw on this big of a medium. Don't expect it to look like an 11 by 17 or even a cop or a cover. It's going to be
Yeah.
like this, so realistic expectations, folks. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And those get a little difficult to work on, and that's why I kind of like put those aside a little bit. Like these take a little too much of my time, and it is what it is. But again, when this property came up, it was like, yeah, I gotta take this one on. So
Well, I'll be glad to see them. I know you'll share in the groups once it's final. So
yeah, once it's out and available, and I know what's happening, I will definitely spread the word. But I'm still waiting for those emails to drop.
nothing lightweight. I've heard those cards being like that. People waiting for a while to get them out. So April was telling me about that too.
Yeah, I think I had these done before the holidays, so it's been a while. So hopefully soon.
Hurry up and wait.
Yep.
We love the industry, but it's like it needs to hurry up sometimes.
Yep.
All right. So everybody, like I said, go out there and support the Kickstarter. It's going to be open for 25 more days. So jump in. You got plenty of time. We just launched not too long ago, and you're funded. But we want to get to those stretch goals. We want to see that get pushed up so we can get more pages and goodies. We always like goodies when we get our stretch goals. But then also go down and check out Sean's website, his store. He's selling all of his books and stuff on. Go support him there too on his Square site. And then, of course, come join the Forney Fanatics. I put the Facebook link down below. And so you'll see all the shenanigans that happens there. All right, Sean, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Nate, thank you. Thanks for having me on here. It's been a pleasure. It's been great to chat with you and just have some fun tonight. So appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And thank you, everybody in YouTube land. Y'all have a good night now.